has been a phenomenally successful entrepreneur. And if you, so gonna click play on this one. And he will be telling you about his entrepreneurial journey, like the slide says. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Nick. And good afternoon, everyone. A few comments before I start talking about what I was supposed to talk about. One is that he said you were going to meet a true entrepreneur. Well, I think I met 10 in the last 15 minutes. I'd also say that you are a magical coach because some of these elevator pitches would have won the Rice Business Plan competition. They were so good. Yours was fantastic. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Very well. All of you. Gary, all of you. Well done. The final small correction is I do not talk about my entrepreneurial journey. It's called the entrepreneurial journey. It's only because I've been a professional speaker for 25 years, and oftentimes I've been asked to talk about myself, and I don't. I simply say, you want to know me now in the age of Google, put my name in. It's a fairly common name in India, but lots of stuff will pop up about me, mostly true. But I will talk about, and I will talk about to all of you today, about what is the entrepreneurial journey, and how much of this is sort of melanged with my own experiences, lessons learned. Because one really should learn from your mistakes. Your successes are often accidental, or luck, or perspiration meeting inspiration, as we call it. The quick show of hands. Well, first of all, great to be here. Wonderful town. I was here about 3 years ago, and it turned out great weather for me. Thank you all. Quick show of hands. Who in this crowd is an entrepreneur? I just think I'm at 10, but this is an astonishingly high percentage for a normal crowd. Who in this crowd wants to be an entrepreneur? A few wannabes. Now, most importantly, who in this crowd knows how to spell entrepreneur? Because it's an interesting word. It didn't exist in the English language 30 years ago. Those of us who are old enough, Medicare eligible, we remember the days when there was no such word. In fact, even in French, this word didn't exist until about 125 years ago. And like the English language is done often, we've stole this word from the French. It comes from the French verb entreprendre, which means to undertake. So I guess every entrepreneur is an undertaker. But now what it's come to mean is what we use it so colloquially. You hear politicians use it, though frankly I don't think any of them have a clue what they mean when they use the word. But it's about someone who starts a business, undertakes great risk with great initiative. But not everyone can be an entrepreneur. I maintain that it's something you don't grow into and you don't learn. You are either an entrepreneur or you're not, because you have to possess the risk gene to be an entrepreneur. You have to have the appetite for risk, but it's not a gene. So it's the misnomer. It's a virus. Because just think about it. Your friends, your family, some are entrepreneurs, most are not. You don't inherit it. Your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your uncles, some are, some are not. In my own family, my father, Army General, not an entrepreneur, great at giving orders, but not an entrepreneur. My two brothers, brilliant, far more brilliant. They got all the IQ in the family. They could be at Los Alamos National Labs. One's a doctor curing diabetes. One's a PhD in artificial intelligence. On the highway, 55 miles an hour is what they drive, not 56. Me? I have 2 radar detectors in the car. One in the front, one in the back. And we're all from the same family, so you don't inherit it. So I call it a virus. It infects people randomly. It infects people not just randomly, but peanut butter on toast, smoothly, all across. My anecdotal, unscientific research says it's 3 to 4% of the world. So it's about 300 million entrepreneurially inclined people in the world who possess this risk gene or this risk virus. It's agnostic. It infects you. To the same extent, gender-wise, so there are as many entrepreneurially inclined women as there are men. There are just not as many entrepreneur women, and that's society's fault. That's men's fault. That's our culture's fault. There are just as many entrepreneurially inclined black people as white people, as yellow people, as red people, as green people. Again, why are some people more entrepreneurial and others not? Culture, government institutions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, it's random. People have it, they have this urge to succeed, they have no fear of failure, and the environment they live in for this gene or this virus to flourish, the environment must reward it. One must celebrate the process of trying and failing rather than excoriating failure. One has to remove the stigma of the disgrace of failure to encourage entrepreneurship. If you think about, Stanford did a research study a few years ago about the disgrace associated with failure in many countries, all across the world, in about 190 countries. Guess which one came up worst? Finland. Western European countries, Asian countries really top the list because they have this cultural thing about failure means, oh man, you're a failure. You tried something, it didn't work, you're a failure. And also, what controls, strangles, or encourages entrepreneurship is your government institutions, financial institutions, the court system. How do you handle bankruptcies? How do you handle contracts? The sanctity of intellectual property. All of this also either encourages or suppresses entrepreneurship. Good case in point, I'd like to point out, which is one of the stellar examples. People always talk about India as now an economic juggernaut, but in 1991 they were bankrupt. They were a socialist economy with rules, regulations. They still are. I mean, it's still a very difficult country to do business in, but the government opened it up just a little bit and the country went on an economic tear, only because of entrepreneurs. Not government, not big business, not multinationals. So, through history, we know that it's entrepreneurs who have rescued the world when it's been in trouble. If you think about the middle 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was sparked by entrepreneurs. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, names such as Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell. When you read that list, and I will read it out for you, it's quite self-evident, think about them. They all started as one or two people. It was Alexander Graham Bell and Watson. Now today, what is that company? AT&T, one of the world's largest institutions. Think about Henry Ford, one man, today, Ford Motor Company. It's not just the Ford Motor Company, it's General Motors, it's Chrysler, it's Toyota. You spawned an industry. The point I'm making is that all these entrepreneurs, legends that we make movies about, started small, had great dreams, great visions, worked at their vision, and then spawned companies that today are Fortune 30. They're Dow component, every one of those companies. Same thing happened after World War II, when the world was in economic doldrums. It was entrepreneurs who came to the rescue. These are entrepreneurs I call them legends in their own time. People like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Ray Kroc, the different industries. My personal favorite is Ted Turner, who arguably helped bring down the Iron Curtain with CNN. He got to marry Jane Fonda. That's pretty entrepreneurial. And he also, I don't know if you know this, he also has the largest number of bison on his farms, trying to bring that animal back from extinction. So he's a pretty good guy. And today, we have what I call the 21st century revolution. And these are, again, legends in the making. We've all heard of Google. How many times does your company get to be a verb in the English language? Yeah. Don't believe me? Google it. Yeah. These are people, Jeff Bezos, who's not only changed the whole world of e-commerce, but has sights set on going into space with Blue Origins, and has the world's largest cloud-based network. Who would have thought an e-commerce company would actually be running the NSA, the CIA, the New York Times, and such massive organizations on its cloud services? So these are, again, just examples of how, started small. Sergey Brin and Larry Page started in the garage of a good acquaintance of mine in Silicon Valley. And look what they've built, one of the world's most incredible companies. So you don't have to be big to be successful. Most entrepreneurs start small, and we'll go through that journey. Just the one common ingredient for all of them is they were innovators. Entrepreneurs innovate. An entrepreneur is always an innovator. An innovator may not always be an entrepreneur. Good example is the Post-it note. Remember the Post-it note? You all use it. It's changed the way we live, changed the way we decorate our fridge. Started by a guy who worked for the 3M company. Retired with the 3M company. 40 years working for the 3M company. What did he get for the Post-it note? Maybe a gold watch. What did 3M get? Billions and billions of dollars. So he was a true innovator, but not an entrepreneur. A true entrepreneur would have said, I got this great idea, I'm going to get out of 3M, I'm going to start the company, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley, I'm going to raise money, and then I'm going to become a billionaire. So that's the risk gene, or the risk virus. Absence of that virus. But again, it's not a bad thing. 97% of the world doesn't have it, only 3% of the world does. So what is innovation? You normally, when you talk to experts, they'll give you some vague definition that goes, it's aspirational, fresh thinking that creates value. Probably because the word innovation is derived from the Latin word innovatus, which literally means into new. And they will have you believe that things like the hula hoop, remember? Who all remembers the hula hoop? Who can hula hoop? Gee, it is tough. But the pet rock, the Cabbage Patch doll, Rubik's Cube, these are innovations. Well, I beg to differ. They're not. You can't compare them with Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin or Jonas Salk's invention of this polio vaccine, or even Steve Jobs' creation of iTunes, iPod, and iPhones. True innovation is something that can be defined as the process by which an idea or an invention, an idea or an invention is transformed, or let me say mutated. Society views innovation just like biology views mutation, into goods and services for which people will pay. Let's talk about how does one go about innovating. Time for a story. You guys ready for a story? It's been heard a lot of stuff. So time for a story. There was a real battle going on between heaven and hell, between Jesus and Satan, about who was smarter on computers and the internet. Because they digitized heaven and they digitized hell, and so it was a big argument. And God was getting fed up with these arguments between the two of them, and just one day decided to put an end to it. He said, okay, Jesus, okay, Satan, I'm going to run a 2-hour test on you both. And you're going to have to print out a report, and then I will judge who's the better. So he sets them both up in a room, equips them with a computer, with internet, Wi-Fi, everything, and then turns them loose. And so they're doing everything a computer can do, word processing, outlooking, browsing the web, doing all PowerPointing, Excelling. And about 5 minutes to go before the 2 hours ended, there's a big flash of lightning, and the power goes out. So I know this room that God set up must have been in New Delhi. Because the power goes out all the time, or in Cairo. So the power goes out, and Satan looks at his screen and is really yelling obscenities, and he's saying, God, I've lost everything. And Jesus just was sitting there, twiddling his thumbs. The power comes back on, and Satan is really beside himself. He said, all my work gone because of this stupid power outage. And Jesus' printer is running, and the report is printed, and he hands it to God. And so Satan said, look, God, the ground rules was we weren't allowed to use magic. Jesus must have done a miracle. How come he did it and I can't? And God simply turns around and says to Satan, Jesus saves. We laugh at the end of a joke, not at the start. And why is that? Because at the start of a joke, we have no perspective. We have no context. Till we hear the punchline. Once we've heard the punchline, our mind works its way backwards to the start of the joke, establishes the context. We laugh, if it's funny. And thankfully you guys laughed. So is it with innovation. Innovation is an abstract concept. It is the ability to see value in hindsight. And there's a famous comment, I forgot who said it. You know what they say about memory? The older you get, it's the second thing that goes. I forgot what the first was. But anyway, there's this comment that says, the ability to see, innovation is an abstract concept, and it remains abstract until you develop the ability to see value in hindsight. That is true innovation. But innovation, it's not an invention, but it could be. It's not an idea alone, an epiphany, a brilliant spark, a flash of genius, but it could be. Innovation is not always unpredictable and random, but it could be. And innovation is not always a spin on an existing product, but it could be. Great case in point, iTunes. It was a great innovation, but it was not an invention. It took Napster's disruptive invention and turned it into an innovation. An idea for which goods and services are created that people will pay. So it could be any one of these, but it doesn't have to be. But what it always is the fuel for entrepreneurship. Without innovation, there is no entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurs innovate. It's as fundamental to the universe as Newton's 3 laws. They are the engine for economic growth. As we saw earlier, they rescue countries and economies out of economic doldrums when they occur, and they create jobs and wealth. But ideas are not always enough. When startup funding comes to mind, what do we have? We need money. So you first go to the 3 F's, friends, family, and fools. You bootstrap your way, you max out your credit card, you don't take any salary, you look for government assistance, particularly if you're in this part of the world, and you look to help from mentors. So that's how you start your business. That's how entrepreneurs start. They have ideas. And the classic funding cycle, we've seen this, the hockey stick. But this little portion here I call the valley of death. Because 9 out of 10 companies never come out of this valley. For every 10 startups, 9 fail. And they fail in various stages. Here we are, the founders start the business with help from the 3 F's. And then as they start to develop the product and the product becomes viable, angels come in, angel investors. We'll talk a little bit about who they are. And as angels come in, you then start to turn the bottom of the valley of death as you start to go out and start getting customers, assuming your product's a good product and it's properly priced. And then venture capitalists come in. See, VCs won't come in until you've actually validated your business model and your concept. And then after that, of course, everything is hunky-dory, and then you turn into Facebook. You hope. That's the funding cycle. But it's entrepreneurs who start businesses. They are the ones who develop their own ventures using their own money. So here you've got entrepreneurs, own business, own money, and of course the money of the 3 F's. After entrepreneurs, you have angels. Again, the second stage of the valley of death. Own money, other people's business. The entrepreneur's business. Entrepreneur, own money, own business. Angels, own money, other people's business. They are oftentimes involved for more than just monetary reasons. I really talk about 4 types of angels. You have the accidental angel. So you meet somebody and they like your idea and they're really not in the business of angel investing and they will put money in. You have the emotional angel. Somebody whose relative suffered from cancer and they run into someone who's developing some cancer drugs. They will make an angel investment, otherwise they're not into investing. And then you'll have regular angels, and then we call the super angels. The super angels, basically it's a matter of scale, the people who write the 7-figure checks. But with the angel comes what I call soft capital. With the hard capital comes the soft capital of connections, network, ability to hire people, a Rolodex, and mentoring. And finally, you have, while you're still in the valley of death, the venture capitalists, and they are investing other people's money in other people's business. Entrepreneurs own money, own business. Angels own money, other people's business. Venture capitalists, other people's money in other people's business. They're tough. They negotiate tough deals. They want to see real business validation. That's why they're known as vulture capitalists. In fact, I'll tell you a story that describes venture capitalists. You ready for another story, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a young entrepreneur. Let's say it's Kelly over there. It's got to be a guy. So it's Gary. And Gary has worked very hard on his business plan, and he's really tried very hard. He's taken money from the 3 Fs. He's gotten to the point where he's ready to present to a venture capitalist, never done it before in his life, and his angel helped set him up for a presentation the next morning. He's got to go present to the venture capitalist, and he's having a panic attack. Doesn't know what to wear. What does the VC expect me to look like? So he says, I'll call my attorney. Calls his lawyer. The lawyer says, look, kid, you got to look like you really don't need the money. So hawk everything you've got, Armani suit, Ferragamo tie, Gucci shoes, and you'll look like $1 million and they will give you the money. Kid doesn't have $1 million. He says, I'll get a second opinion. He goes to his accountant. Got this really important meeting with this venture capitalist tomorrow, what should I wear? He says, look kid, you gotta lead like you need the money. Torn jeans, dirty t-shirt, gym shoes. They'll feel sorry for you and they'll give you the money. Now the poor fellow is really conflicted. Attorney tells him to look like $1 million. Accountant tells him to look like a bum. So he says, I'll get a tie, make third opinion. I'll go to my priest. So he goes to his priest and he says, Father, I got this really important meeting tomorrow. Present to a venture capitalist. My attorney tells me to look like $1 million. My accountant tells me to look like a bum. And the priest says, son, let me tell you a story. It's a story inside of a story. Just the other night, this young lady came to me on the eve of her wedding. She was equally conflicted as to what to wear. Her mother had told her to wear a flannel nightgown from neck to toe. Her sister had told her to wear the sexiest necklace she could find. The kid says, Father, here I am so stressed about tomorrow's presentation. You're telling me this cockamamie story about some girl on her wedding night. And he says, son, let me tell you what I told her. Doesn't matter what you wear, you're going to get screwed. That's venture capitalist for you. But the entrepreneur is constantly faced with a conundrum. And it's not about what he has to wear. It's how he deals with government and local institutions. Because local institutions matter. If you don't have the basic institutions that are the soil and fertilizer within which startups can grow, where you have the rule of law, access to electricity, where you have the ability to write contracts and get redress if somebody defaults or is fraudulent, and have all of the free and open stock markets that allow you to trade, allow you to make exits, you really have no incentive to take that kind of risk. Risking your money, your friends, your family, and all the other fools who've invested the money with you. But the problem is, once government sets these institutions up, and they begin to work well, like they do in the United States, they work great in the United States, they need to learn to get the hell out of the way. To allow the entrepreneur then to do what he can, to allow the fertilizer and soil to let this entity grow. Because institutions matter, because when they work well, they really enable the entrepreneur to compete on a global level. 30 years ago, when you started a business, it was primarily local. But today with the internet, any entrepreneur can be global from the day he flips the switch. And they also allow you to compete with well-established firms. Still remember, my first company, to get a brochure printed, I need 4-color separations. Do you remember the days of 4-color separations? It cost an arm and a leg to print. Today, I can run it off my home HP computer for cents versus tens of thousands of dollars. So you're able to compete globally and against very established firms. And when they don't work, they become a trap. Hold you back, allow the major companies that work under the laws of other nations, their home countries, to outcompete you, and they send you most often into the parallel economy. How are we doing for time? Okay.
Okay, yeah, good, you're good.
And in emerging markets, because this is something that I go around the world and talk a lot about emerging markets, it's been a tough lesson. For 30 years, socialism and social economies was what dominated world thinking in the emerging market world. But today people have woken up, and the BRIC countries have shown that by liberalizing their rules, by encouraging entrepreneurship rather than having big public sector run companies and corporations, they can bring countries out of the doldrums. There still is problems with crony capitalism. I think, you look at Russia. They didn't really turn entrepreneurial. They just gave all their entrepreneurial opportunities to cronies. Or you look at Mexico. World's richest man is Mexican. But that's because he ended up getting Telefonos de Mexico, Telmex. It was crony capitalism. So we'll take a quick look at the health of entrepreneurship. I just wanted to give you some snapshots about where it is easy to do business and where it's not. And the World Bank does a study every year called Doing Business. They take 189 countries and rank them. Here's just some of the factors that they use in coming up with their overall ease of doing business, which means how entrepreneur-friendly are these countries. Even the world's most advanced countries screw things up. Look at France, 149th in the world in terms of difficulty in registering property. Should be simple, but they make it tough. Germany, 98th in the world in protection of investors. There's not a lot of incentive in Germany for angel investors. This investor protection is tough. So, and these are highly advanced countries. Now you look at countries like Malaysia and Thailand, they're doing a great job in trying to attract business because they've finally woken up to the fact that without entrepreneurship they can't really get out of the rut they're in. If you look at the BRIC countries, they're doing terrible. Brazil's 116th difficult place, and if you look at India, even worse. 134th most difficult country in the world to do business in, even after all the liberalization. So really, when you come to think about it, the BRIC countries are succeeding, not because of their government, but in spite of their governments. Now, the United States is the 4th easiest country in the world to do business in, and some of it is our complicated tax structure and that sort of stuff. Who do you think is the easiest country in the world to do business in?
Canada.
Anyone want to take a guess?
Singapore.
Who said Singapore?
Singapore.
Top of the class. It's Singapore. Singapore is the world's easiest country to do business in, the most entrepreneur-friendly country in the world, but not the most entrepreneurial country in the world. And why is that? Culture, environment, the disgrace with failure, the pushing the young men and women to take safe, stable jobs when they graduate from college, and not go into the risky business of starting their own company. This whole business of excoriating failure versus celebrating it makes them live their life. If they're infected with the virus, makes them live their life like caged animals, rather than go out and build value. I was a caged animal for 20 years, till finally at the age of 40, I had my epiphany and said, I'm going to quit and try to start a business. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to being in the cage. But again, part of it was my own cultural traditions, from my own home. I'm originally from India, and the whole thing is be a doctor or be an engineer and go get a nice job, which is also in China. But in the end, if you are infected with that virus, if you want to be an entrepreneur, the final act of preparing to act is to stop preparing and just do it. Because when you're young, and oftentimes, the audience is quite young when they're listening to me, you have much more time on your hands than your money. So go spend your time. You're not spending too much of it because you got plenty of it. And then give it a shot. Because it's all about not being afraid to take risks and not being afraid to fail. I would like to end with a little bit of my own story, but it's not my story. It's about lessons learned along the way. It's lessons learned by flattening my nose. I call it the school of bloody noses. You make mistakes, you learn from them. And then, along the way, you try to incorporate the lessons from the mistakes and try not to make them again. The stupid part is, it's okay to make a mistake. The stupid part is to make it more often, again and again and again. The first lesson is, the life of an entrepreneur is euphoria to terror every heartbeat. You're euphoric when you get the order, and then it's Wednesday and you have to make payroll on Friday and you don't have enough money in the bank and it's terror. Then you collect a check on Friday and it's euphoria again. So you go from euphoria to terror every heartbeat. So I got my guy doing it again, Professor I'll be darned. And the basics that for the entrepreneur, and even for the non-entrepreneur, even for the genius scientists that work at the national labs. there are some basics. If you follow your life, your success will be greater. One is good hard work and attitude. Doesn't matter if your boss is a horse's ass. As long as you have a good attitude and you work hard, you will end up differentiating yourself. Doesn't matter how much he or she suppresses you. Know your numbers. This is a very important lesson for entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs are type A's, they're going 100 miles an hour, and the numbers somebody else will take care of. I have a CFO, I have an accountant, I have a bookkeeper. I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to understand finance, to understand value creation, to understand things like working capital, cash. Just thinking about, I'll make it up in volume isn't going to work. So know your numbers. Learn from your own mistakes. And the reason I harp on this is I used to, during my working life, keep a list of the 10 worst mistakes I'd ever made. In writing, on a piece of paper. You know the problem with that list was? It used to change all the time. Because that meant I made another mistake that was worse than number 10. So it dropped off the list and something else came in. But it was useful in terms of reminding you that you had made these mistakes and that you should learn from them. But that's the second best way of learning. The best way is to learn from other people's mistakes. And by that I mean acquire mentors. So if you can get mentors who will sincerely mentor you, you've really cut half the problem out. My biggest lament is I wish the me of today had been sitting on the shoulder of the me of 35 years ago. I would have been far better off. You need to smile. Simple thing. Have a happy workplace. As a leader, as an entrepreneur, you may be weighed down with problems. You may be in that terror, down in the valley of terror there and not get back to euphoria. You have to lead because your folks follow your moods quite closely. And finally, you have to learn how to write well and speak well, because these are skills that, at least writing well is disappearing with all of the shortcuts and the text messages and the various spell checks and everything else we do. We have lost the art of writing a great email or a great letter. And if you do that, if you keep that skill alive, you will differentiate yourself, even whether you think so or not. And you'll be remembered by the reader. And the other one is to speak well. That's a must. It's very important even in your daily life. I know it's the greatest fear any human being has. The Book of Lists. I don't know if any of you have a copy of the Book of Lists. Lists all kinds of things. One of them is the fear people have. And in that, number one fear is the fear of public speaking. The fear of death is number 7. But the fear of public speaking is number 1. Fear of financial failure is 2. Fear of spiders is 3. Arachnophobia is 3. But it's a very important lesson, and I think that the best way to get to be a better speaker is by practice. Practice, practice, practice. And I'll end with a list of some, what I call commandments. Back in the days when I had my companies, I'd say some stupid things, crazy things. It just would come out. And my employees got to writing it down. And they ended up printing a booklet. They called it Ashokisms. For me. Now I've extracted a few of them for me to just give you a sort of a wrap for what is the life of an entrepreneur and the lessons learned. First is care passionately. You got to care. Entrepreneurs are aggressive, outgoing, usually. You can have the scientist entrepreneur as well, who may be a little more laid back, but you care. You care about your customers, you care about your employees, and you care about your investors. Long before you care about yourself, you need to care about these 3. But then the paradox is that while you are passionately caring, you need to be intellectually ruthless. Ruthless and caring don't go together, does it? It's paradox. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. When I started the business that I took public in 1995, and it was supposed to be a great success and all that, we started very small, 8 people around a coffee table, and as we started to gain a little traction, I brought on board a CFO. Great guy. Was like my soul brother. Hardworking, 60, 80 hours a week. Built the company from 0 to 8 million to 25 to 55 to 110. And we're on our way. And by the time we got to 100 million, it was obvious to everybody in the company, except me, that the job had become too big for him. He was struggling. He He was drowning. He didn't want to admit it because he probably didn't see it, and I didn't see it. And it hurt us in the end. And the intellectually ruthless thing to do while caring for this guy like my own brother would have been to find something else for him to do, which I didn't do. Mistake. So that's the paradox of caring and being ruthless at the same time. Entrepreneurs tend to be control freaks. We hate to delegate. So delegate everything, but don't delegate success. Delegate everything except success. Because never get away from those fundamentally important parts of your business that make or break it. Maybe it's a particular thing in procurement that's you have a procurement manager, but it's so fundamentally important to your business, stay connected. Or maybe it's one particular sale, one key lighthouse account. Yes, you got a sales VP, you got a salesman, but if it's that important, stay connected. So delegate everything, but don't delegate success. We already talked about this, track your mistakes, not your successes. And don't try to screw the other party when you're negotiating a deal. Best deals are made at the point of indifference. By that I mean both parties walk away slightly unhappy. It's a good deal. It'll last. If you walk away euphoric and the other one walks away saying, God, I got screwed, it's not going to be a good deal long term. Deal delayed is a deal betrayed. By this I mean, this is advice to entrepreneurs that say, don't hang on to your business beyond the point of when it makes sense. If there's a deal on the table that's good for those three constituents, customers, employees, and investors, take it. I think Jerry Yang from Yahoo should have taken this piece of advice when Microsoft tried to buy him for $38 a share. Now they're languishing at what, 14? Communicate, we already talked about that. Hire trust. Price of betrayal is expensive. When we're hiring people back before we have too much experience, what do we want? We want the resume, we want the experience, we want the Rolodex, we want leaner, meaner, stronger, faster, that sort of thing. We forget about the fact that we've got to have somebody you can trust with your life. And if I look at the 10 worst mistakes of my life, the most recent up-to-date list, 6 of them are hiring mistakes. The price of betrayal is expensive. So, talent is important, but trust is even more. In fact, in the latest stages of my life, when I used to go to headhunters and ask for them, they'd ask for me for the top 3 requirements. The first one I'd put is trust. And the headhunter said, I've never seen this before from anybody. Though I wish I had copyrighted this because Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book that became a bestseller saying just this. Those who get you there, don't get you out of there. That means that no amount of remedial training can help people who have gotten you into trouble. You have to go back to Ashokism number 2 and be intellectually ruthless and make some changes. So those who get you there, don't get you out of there. We, entrepreneurs, tend to be very fast-moving. And oftentimes we'll outstrip our supply lines. You'll be out there all by yourself, turn around, and your troops are way in the back. So you can go faster sometimes by slowing down. During doldrums, and every company has doldrums, precipitate a crisis, artificial one, but make sure you manage to it. Here's a good example. You go to a trade show, and your company's in sort of doldrums, and you've got this key customer come by, promise them something that you know engineering can't deliver. And then make engineering deliver it. Don't do it as always, but once in a while, it's good to precipitate a crisis. Be part accountant, be part lawyer. Know your numbers and know the law. No amount of CFO and general counsel will help if you don't fundamentally understand the risks involved. Pay attention to the details. The comment is, you get 100% better, 1% in 100 areas. So pay attention to the details. Entrepreneurs tend to be non-detail oriented. Be decisive. Indecision is like being pecked to death by blunt ducks. Don't shave Superman. This is for the guys. And I haven't come up with an equally nice equivalent for lady leaders. But what does that mean? Don't shave Superman. Every morning, the person you meet in the mirror as you get ready to shave is not Superman. You may have just rung the opening bell at NASDAQ. You may have been featured in Inc. magazine. Your stock may have gone up 50% the day you listed it. You're the same person, warts and all, mistakes and all. So stay grounded, stay humble to the best you can. Don't shave Superman. Don't drink your own whiskey, we say in Texas, but don't shave Superman. Stay the way you are. That's the best way you can handle it. It's good for you, good for your karma, good for your employees, good for your wife or your husband. And it is something that most entrepreneurs really fall prey to. Worry about tomorrow's problems? Tomorrow. This doesn't mean don't be strategic. This doesn't mean don't plan. But what this means is learn to compartmentalize and not get paralyzed with fear about what might happen tomorrow. Stay in the moment, handle the things that happen today. So worry about tomorrow's problems tomorrow. Don't push the river, let it flow. Don't force things. A lot of young entrepreneurs will come to me with two types of questions. One is, gee, I have this great idea, I don't know where to find funding for it. Or the other one is, gee, I really want to do my own business, I don't have an idea. And to both of them, the answer is, don't push the river, let it flow. As you wind your way down that river, you go across the bend, there might be standing a potential investor. You go around the bend, and there might be standing that partner that has the idea that the two of you can then take to the next level. Or as you go around the bend, there may be that contact, that desperately needed contact, your first customer. So in the end, with all of the impatience that our entrepreneurial virus endows us with, this essentially says, be a little patient. Don't push the river, let it flow, because it will get you eventually. And the final Ashokism that I have for this list, the total booklet's about 100 long, is I wish it was a piece of advice that people like Bernie Madoff and Bernie Evers and Ken Lay and all had taken. If it feels wrong, it is. Don't cut those corners. Now don't get paralyzed by bureaucracy. There are times to cut corners. But if it feels wrong, don't do it. Sleep better at night. Don't cheat on your taxes. Pay your taxes. That's not what I mean, but that's the equivalent of the same. So having said all of that, thank you.
What an amazing entrepreneur. So Ashok flew into Houston specifically to speak to
Los Alamos.
Oh, right. Whatever. So specifically here to speak to you. He has successful exits. He's an angel investing in Houston. He has many, many other things to do.
You want me to read the poem you said you wanted?
That would be a wonderful encore, and while he's reading his wonderful poem, which he wrote for you, this is one of his, like I said, he's doing wonderful things, like he's starting a restaurant, he has his poem, and he's doing great giving back stuff now that he is a successful entrepreneur. So an inspiring and wonderful person to have to present to us. I wanted to also suggest that you prepare a question if you have one. And then once Ashok is done with that, then we will open the floor for questions, if we have time.
Well, this is a poem I wrote for entrepreneurs, primarily for young entrepreneurs, but it applies to everyone. And I shared it with Nick, and he says, please read it at my class. So under protest, I'm reading it. But here goes. I call this poem, That One Is You. That one is you. So here goes. Do you feel sometimes lost and nameless, like one raindrop in deep ocean's blue? One snowflake on mountains majestic, fleeting vapor from morning dew. A whisper hushed by competing voices, a haunting note in melody sung. Yes, we're part of a wondrous family, yet still defined by the power of one. One tree can start a forest, One flower can awaken a dream. One song can spark a moment. One bird can herald spring. One smile begins a friendship. One laugh will conquer gloom. One candle destroys the darkness. One sunbeam will light a room. One breath brings life eternal. One path will lead you there. One step must start each journey. One touch can show you care. Stay the course, light a star, change the world wherever you are. One person can make a difference, and that person is you.
Fantastic, thanks. We are so lucky to have you, so thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here. I look forward. Wow. And you, what a speaker. Okay, so I'm being blown away right now. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And we can take some questions from the audience.
We have a product, we have the market, we figured out how brains work and how to build them, but we're short the skilled labor here, and we're thinking of coincidentally moving to Houston. How do we know whether that's a good idea or not?
Moving to Houston is always a good idea. And do play golf?
Yeah.
Well, you play 365 days a year. Well, what I think you have, I mean, typically in any startup you have three risks. Technology risk, product risk, technology risk, market risk, and execution risk. It seems like you've got the first two handled. You've got your product, you've got your technology all sorted out. You're in a market, you think that's good enough, you validate the market. It's not like you're selling telex machines. Anybody remember telex? You know, Bill, you and I are the only two who remember all this stuff. What's the problem?
I don't know where you've been.
So you've got those two risks handled, and you're now facing the risk that typically destroys most startups, which is execution risk. And if you're unable to get the talent here, you're thinking about absolutely the right thing to do, which is to locate to a place where you can have access to that kind of talent, or where you can have people move. People will move to Houston because, one, cost of living is low. Two, year-round weather, even though summers can be hot and humid. And three, there is a very large pool of existing talent. What business is it in?
Since we know how brains work, we can make things that, say, make sense out of lots of data, or the one we're working on at the moment is, can you make an app that helps a woman go and buy jewelry? The app learns what she cares about, and according to my friend, most importantly, can tell her husband with the push of a button so he knows what to get.
Oh, I need that app. If you had asked me out of the blue, where should that company locate, I would have said Silicon Valley. But Houston's not a bad place.
Right, we'll take another question.
Go ahead, sir.
In listening to the talk, it seemed like that only for-profit organizations are entrepreneurs. Does it apply? I mean, what about for nonprofit?
Everyone here heard the question? Well, no. Actually, social entrepreneurship is on the rise. But typically, an entrepreneur involved, even social entrepreneurs make money. Otherwise, you're in the charity business. So typically, entrepreneur equals the desire to create wealth, create jobs, create economic growth, typically, to be an entrepreneur. Now, once you've been a successful entrepreneur, you can go back to giving back, paying it forward, as they call it. But I think, essentially, the definition of entrepreneur is you're going to go out there and do something that's going to change the world, but make you money.
Right. Jay,
Yeah, John.
What separates from a great idea versus a great business, or a good idea versus a good business, and how for a class of budding entrepreneurs, how do you know the difference between one versus the other?
Great idea versus great business. Well, you really at the start you don't know until you've handled those three risks: technology, market, and execution. Because oftentimes a great idea could simply be an idea looking for a problem to solve that doesn't exist. Also, you need people to execute. So sometimes you may have a great idea, but you don't have the right team, and you can't take it out of the valley of death. You can't attract the investment capital that you need, or you can't bootstrap your way. But at the outset, it's very hard to tell. Now, if you have a great team with a track record, the chances of success, we all know, are a little better. But if it's a first-time entrepreneur with a first-time idea, it's a 10% chance, irrespective of the idea.
Ashok, everybody.